We have a very special guest in studio today. He is the owner and operator of Bolyard's Meat and Provisions. Chris Bolyard, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, man, you came highly recommended from Robert Riley, who we just had on the show, and yeah, I mean, he said nothing but great things about you. So and I mean, we just had him on last week, and here you are.
Feelings mutual with him. He's a good guy.
Yeah, he's great. So. So I mean, you've got a lot going on here. You run 100-mile races. You own a meat and provisions store. Really, I don't even know what to get into first. But I guess, how did you get into your business? How did that all start?
I've been cooking my whole life. I've never not had a job where it wasn't in a restaurant. And right out of high school, I went to the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, New York. Graduated from there in 2000, came back to St. Louis and just, started digging in and worked for Bill Cardwell for about 4.5 years.
I know a ton of Cardwell guys.
Okay, yeah. It's kind of crazy. It's like there was like an article put out about him, like the 7 circles of Bill Cardwell. Like everybody's connected to him somehow. It's kind of crazy. So many people have worked for him. And,
I worked with the Glickerts.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I've worked with Matt. I'm good friends with Matt and Chris. And, what's Dave's last name? He was also a chef.
Dave Owens?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, Dave. Man, there's so many guys that are Jeff. I can't remember his last name. But yeah, I worked at Sugar Fire for a long time. Okay. So a lot of those guys went from Cardwell's to Sugar Fire.
Yeah. And then from there, I met Kevin Nashin, and I worked for him at Sydney Street Cafe for over 10 years. I was his chef de cuisine there. And that's kind of where I did most of my personal and professional growth. I'd say more professional growth, honestly. But during my 10 years there, we started bringing in whole animals and butchering, doing a lot of butchering.
At Caldwell's?
No, at Sydney Street Cafe. Yeah.
Okay.
I met Kevin through Cardwell's, and then so I was at Sydney Street with Kevin for about 10.5 years, and I just really grew to love that aspect of food. Just taking a whole animal and breaking it down into parts and utilizing everything, because it's almost limitless on what you can do with a whole animal. It's just fascinating to me, and it's still to this day very rewarding and gratifying to do. And there's always new things to learn, always new angles to approach with it. And a big part of that is making charcuterie and preserving meat and things like that. And so I met my wife during that time, and she has a very strong restaurant background as well. She worked for Gerard Kraft for many years. And when I met her, she was managing a Bogey Hills Country Club out in St. Charles. And we just, we both knew we wanted to do something of our own. We both kind of had that mindset, we want to have our own place. Didn't know really what that looked like. And then it kind of evolved into a butcher shop concept. And, it just made sense because that's the direction food was going. People then and now are very concerned with where their food comes from and, everything that is tied to it. And at the time there wasn't anything like that. And there still really isn't. There's other butcher shops, in St. Louis, but none that are really doing what we're doing. And so, we opened the shop in 2014 on Black Friday, and we're still here. We're still doing it.
Still doing it.
Yeah. And what makes your shop different than?
So we work solely with local farms. And, there's some criteria that has to be met with these farms. We have very close relationships with all of them. We've been to all these farms. We've been to all the processing facilities where the animal is killed. And really what is important to us is the animal's welfare, that these farms are practicing good animal husbandry. So they're on pasture their whole life. They're free to live a life that they're supposed to. They're never taken off grass. They're never given any kind of growth hormones or unnecessary antibiotics. Just a stress-free life as much as possible, right? And then a humane kill. I always tell people that, this farmer can spend all this time investing in the animal, giving it a good life, feeding it all the things that it needs. It has room to roam, to be a cow or a pig, good genetics, all these things. And then if they take it to get killed, all that stuff can just go out the window if the kill doesn't go as planned, or if it's not humane, or if there's struggle, things like that. There's a lot of factors that can affect the meat.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
When it's dispatched, yeah.
Stress toward the end of the animal's life. I heard that can.
Yeah, because the animal produce hormones. It'll affect the pH of the meat, and then in turn affect the quality of the meat. If it's not bled out properly, there can be things called blood spotting, which just affects the quality of the meat. It's not necessarily a food safety issue, but
yeah. Okay.
So yeah, I mean that's kind of like the backbone of like that's kind of the ethos of the shop, right? Yeah. So it's our responsibility to utilize the entire animal, to respect it. So we do our best to not waste anything. And the shop has kind of grown and evolved over the years on what it looks like today versus what it looked like when we first opened. We've moved locations, so now the shop has it's not only a full service butcher shop, but it has a restaurant inside of it. So it's a fairly large space compared to the old space. And we serve lunch every day. We serve brunch on the weekends, and everything on that menu comes in the front door on 4 legs. So, like for example, we have smash burgers. We have a whole variety of sandwiches. Like our deep fryers are filled with beef fat, like just straight beef fat. Yeah, if you've ever had a potato fried in beef fat, it's
the best.
It's pretty magical.
Best,
yeah,
for sure.
All the pig skin gets turned into pork rinds, so all the sandwiches and burgers are served with pork rinds. Just things like that. I mean, we have a line of raw dog food, dog treats, whether they're bones or dehydrated liver. Everything down to the back fat on the hogs gets used to make sausage. There's always going to be some waste, but there's very little. We do our best to not waste anything.
Wow, that's so cool.
And we work with a few local restaurants. We do a little bit of wholesale, but yeah, essentially we're bringing in whole sides of beef, whole hogs, whole chickens. We get a lamb or two once a month, and we utilize everything. So we're making stocks, broths, rendered fats for cooking, because we have an area where it's a refrigerated area where it's provisions, and it can be anything from like condiments, fermented items, rendered fats, rendered stocks.
And people can purchase these there?
Yeah. And everything is made in-house. That's also kind of a big part of our business. I mean, with my background as being a chef, there's always opportunities to incorporate that thought process into what we're doing. So, we have a pretty big fermentation program, meaning we ferment vegetables and meat. So the vegetable side of things would be like, examples would be like sauerkraut or kimchi. Those are fermented vegetables. And then fermented meats would be like salamis, right? If you've ever had a summer sausage, everybody's had a summer sausage. That's a fermented meat product. So we do, just dozens and dozens of varieties of house-made stuff.
Man, I wish I would have had time to get there
Yeah.
before we had you on.
And it's my, now I'm thinking about it, I should have brought in stuff for you guys to snack on.
No big deal. We'll,
yeah.
I'm sure Pat and I we'll have to make a trip there the next week or two.
It's a good excuse to come out.
Meat, so.
Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. And so, when you opened up the first one, did you have the restaurant with it then, or was that with?
No. So the first space, it was literally across the street. So we've always been in Maplewood,
okay.
And it was like 1,600 square feet, very small. We eventually started offering a sandwich just as a way to utilize stuff that wasn't selling out of the case, and we introduced like a biscuit and gravy on Saturday, and then that was about the extent of it. I think we might have had 3 or 4 sandwiches, but no kitchen, no hood, nothing. It was just very simple, small operation. And then when the pandemic hit, honestly, it was like our best year down there. It was very good for us. Fortunately, I know it was terrible for a lot of people, and people lost their businesses, but it was a crazy time for everybody, right? But it was good for us because there were meat shortages in the stores, right? There were like huge processing facilities that employed hundreds of people. That outbreaks occurred, and so people were sick and they couldn't work, and they were shutting down these processing facilities, and so that's what caused some meat shortages. I mean, grocery store shelves were empty, and people were like freaking out, and so people were buying big freezers and buying in bulk and kind of panic buying because they didn't know what was going to happen, and that in turn caused people to source meat other places, and through that they discovered us. Which was great. And so we did our part. We closed down for 2 weeks. We had to really kind of rethink our business and how we're going to operate because things were different for a long time, until they kind of went back to normal, whatever that looks like. But, we just hit this point where we knew that we could do so much more business in this tiny space, but we were very limited to just the square footage of it, and so David Schlafly, he owned the space we were operating out of, and he owned another space just across the street. And we had seen restaurants come and go in this space over the years. It was kind of crazy. Like I could name 4 or 5 places it was before us. And it's this opportunity opened up, and we were always kind of like debating on whether or not we wanted to do something like that, have a restaurant and a butcher shop in the same space, because it just made sense with our backgrounds and stuff. And so we just decided to do it, and it's turned out pretty well. I will say it was really rough the first year and a half. It was kind of like starting over. We had to figure some things out. I mean, we tripled the space. So there was, everything doubled, our labor, our costs, everything, and just trying to like manage that and navigate like how to make that work. But we've been in this new space since May of 21, and it feels like home now. And it's a lot more dialed in than it was the first year and a half for sure.
It takes time, man.
Yeah, it does. It takes time.
I worked in restaurants for 10 years. It's I was a part of a couple different restaurants that opened, like part of the opening process, and that hectic like first like 2 months.
It's chaotic.
It's chaotic, and then it still takes time to even like get your systems down and get your reliable employees. And I mean, there's just so many aspects of restaurants that are challenging. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I know that that, but it's just it's very difficult to run a restaurant. It's not an easy thing.
Yeah. The failure rate's pretty high. Yeah. We feel very fortunate to still be doing it, and it hasn't been. It's not like, I don't know. I don't ever take anything for granted, because it ebbs and flows. It's like feast or famine. We have our busy season, and then there's times throughout the year where it's just so dead, and you're like, man, is this going to be the year that we don't make it? Like, it's But I mean, every business has ebbs and flows. I mean, it's just harder because like with restaurants, you're just physically seeing people come in and out of the doors, and it just makes it hard. Like, man, we're normally busy at lunchtime on a Thursday. Like, why is it slow today? Like, what's going on? Is it raining? Is it like there's so many things that can affect? At least that's what we always figured out was like there's so many things that like affect whether we're busy or not. Is it the weather? Is it like what the Cardinals doing today? Like, there's so many different little things that like, oh shit, I didn't realize that there's a thing downtown today. There's a bunch of people that've got to be there, whatever it is. Yeah,
and
it's true.
You just don't even think about that stuff. And it's crazy. So when an animal when you guys order meat, so an animal just comes in fully.
So the hogs come in as 2 sides, like a whole. So at the processor, I'll just quickly kind of run through. Yeah. So they'll stun the animal with electricity, then they bleed it out, and then it gets, they remove the hair, so they'll dip it in a very hot water bath, like 140 degrees, put it in a tumbler to remove all the hair, and then they eviscerate it, take out all the internal organs, and then they'll remove the head and then split it in half. And so that's how we get it. It's fully dressed. It's the hanging weight is what they refer to it. So we get the head intact and 2 sides of the animal. And we'll get all of the organ meat, like the heart, the liver, the kidney, the tongue.
It's all just separate.
Yeah. And we utilize all that stuff too. So that's how the hogs come in as sides. And then the beef, it's much
bigger.
It's bigger. It's huge, right? So like, live, the animal could be around 1,200 pounds. And then the hanging weight when it's dressed and ready for us to use, the whole thing is around 800 pounds on average. And we don't have like a big fancy rail system to bring these sides of beef into the shop. So the farmer will pick up let's say we get 4 sides of beef a week, which is like 2 whole beefs. Okay. The farmer will go and the processor will split each side into thirds so they're more manageable.
Sure.
Because it's really heavy and it takes usually 3 guys to like manage these things. So it's on the rail, a side of beef is on the rail, and the processor will split in thirds. So like the chuck and then the rib section and then the hind quarter. Right. And then it gets loaded on the truck, like on a cart. They wrap it in bags, put it on a cart, and put it onto the truck. Comes to us, a few of us go out there, pull it off the truck onto a cart, wheel it into the walk-in. And then we have a rail in our walk-in where we hang, like the hind quarters and forequarters and things like that. And that's what it looks like. And we get deliveries once a week. Usually on Thursdays is when most of the stuff comes in. We get our hogs and our beef and our chickens. And then we just start breaking it down from there. And it's fun too, because it's almost like a puzzle. I mean, the animal, we utilize the animal in various ways, depending on the week. And the factors that will play into that will be needs for wholesale, the kitchen needs, because like we're making roast beef for the sandwiches, we're making ham for the sandwiches, pulled pork for the Cuban. There's all these things to consider before you start breaking it down and divvying it out to where it needs to go. And then, customers' demands. I mean, we have daily customers calling and putting in orders for things. So we have to keep that in mind. It's tricky because, there's only so much of each thing on the animal. So you can't just, freely just start selling things, because
just sell pork butts.
Yeah, because there's only so much. So you'll run out, you'll oversell, things like that. So you just have to be mindful of how you're taking apart the animal and what the needs are that week. But it's fun because it also forces you to be creative, and through that process you discover new ways of preserving the animal or marketing it in a certain way. Yeah.
So how many are you bringing in a week?
On average right now, 2 whole beeves a week, anywhere from 1 to 3 hogs a week, like 60 or 70 chickens. And then once a month we'll get a lamb, and the lambs weigh like 70 pounds. And they go pretty quick. Like
if Bosnians love that stuff.
Yeah, there is a market for it,
For sure.
Yeah.
Especially here in St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
And with my, my time, this is something I always because I worked in a handful of kitchens before I worked with the Cardwell guys. And it's just one thing that always like impressed me, or something that I'd never like really paid attention to until I started working with them, was like just how they don't waste anything. Everything gets used. Like nothing gets thrown away. Like, everything got saved and used for something else. And I was like, oh, like normally people would just throw this shit away, but no, we're going to go use it to make stock.
Yep.
Or we're going to go use it to, and like all that stuff. It really like, it got me thinking like, wow, how much stuff is just wasted constantly in the restaurant industry in general, but there's a lot of people out there that do utilize everything. And it was just so impressive to me that just something that I'd never really seen before in person. Yeah.
And I think that mindset has helped with the success of the shop. Just having a chef's mentality and not wasting anything, like, turning the scraps, quote unquote, into something that's delicious or something that is marketable. Because the margins are so razor thin in my business. It's kind of crazy, but you have to be like that. Like you have to think about all the little things because it all adds up. And you know, it's if you don't, you're not going to make it. You know.
Yeah.
Do you think opening this and now having to get creative has helped you become a better chef than before?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Like we've always played around with different things over the years to utilize, you know, waste or products that we would be forced to turn into like maybe dog food or something like that. So a good example, right now we started playing around with making garums, if you know what a garum is. So the best example of what a garum is fish sauce. Okay. That's a type of garum. And you can make garums out of a lot of different substrates. So the main thing is it has to have very high protein content. Like the traditional way to make a garum is lots of salt and a lot of thyme, right? So like
time, like physical time, or time
no, like physical time.
Okay, physical
yeah, physical time.
Like with an H or not?
Right. So like the Romans developed this method of making fish sauce or these garums, and they would take whole fish, pack them with tons of salt in these barrels, and there's an enzyme inside of the fish's digestive tract that breaks down food, but through the process of decomposing, that enzyme is released into the rest of the fish's body, and it starts breaking down everything else in the fish. Normally, it's just contained in the intestines, and it's just doing its job in the intestines. But through that process, it releases liquid that's like really full of amino acids and incredibly flavorful. The enzyme is called protease. It's in intestines. And so kind of fast forward to the point I'm trying to make. We've discovered like this new way. We didn't come up with it, but
you're implementing a new way.
Yeah, we're implementing a new way to make garums really fast. Like the process takes months and months to do, but there's a method to do it where you can take this protease enzyme, and you can buy it in like a powder form, and it's essentially pig pancreas. And so this enzyme, and you combine it with your protein substrate, and you cook it at 140 degrees, and within 3 hours you've got garum. Whoa. And it's pretty wild to watch. Like we did it. We're running a fish sandwich for Lent right now, and there's we portioning this cod. You have scraps left over, so we took those scraps and we combined it with this pig pancreas enzyme, a little bit of water. There's percentages. It's like 1% of the total weight you add the enzyme to, and you blend it up. And we put it in a vacuum bag.
This is just all the scraps from the fish.
It's just straight cod, yeah. And this protein, this protease, this enzyme, and it's like 1% of the total weight. So it's not a lot of this enzyme versus how much protein there is. Blend it up, and then we seal it up in a vacuum sealed bag, and then we cook it sous vide in a water bath at 140 degrees for 3 hours, and everything just liquefies. It's pretty crazy. We strain that off, and essentially you've got fish sauce.
That's cool.
So we're working towards like applying that to other things too, because there's always, you could do it with egg whites, you could do it with, other types of proteins.
What would you do with the egg whites? Make like hollandaise or no?
What do you mean? Like
what kind of sauce are you making with?
I don't know. No, we haven't done that yet. We haven't done that yet. But I know that you can use egg whites as like the substrate to make a garum, an egg white garum.
Oh, okay. Cool.
But so that's been fun, like just stuff like that. I mean, I've always been fascinated with just the whole process of preserving things or fermentation. That whole world is just always been fascinating to me. We serve draft beer, and any of the runoff we save and we make vinegar out of. So we have beer vinegar that we'll use in various things on the menu. Just like ways like that. And I think, again, it's this chef mentality of like just trying to not waste anything, or there's always like an opportunity to like utilize this thing and do something fun with it, and these garums are just like, it's just another arsenal in your pantry, right? It's just like this flavor bomb that can be just a dash of something in the recipe that you're making. And it's like, oh man, this is incredible. This is so good. and it doesn't have to be like the star of the show, but it's, just something else that you can kind of incorporate into your arsenal of things.
Yeah.
So would you say being a chef and is that more of a science or an art?
Oh, I think there's both to it. I mean, there's definitely a lot of science involved in it. And that just, that can be as far down that rabbit hole as you want to go. I mean, there's a lot of science to it. But there's for sure an element of an art and a craft to it. I cook with passion and, in my heart and soul. And it's, repetitiveness over time. You do things over and over and over. I mean, butchery is a lot like that. We always tell people you're not going to get good at doing this until you just get a lot of reps in. You have to do it over and over and over. And you start honing your technique and the whole craft of it. And that's how you get good. So yeah, there's an artistic side of it, I think, for sure.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I mean, there's got to be something kind of like primal about butchering an animal, but it's such a cool concept. And it's something that's kind of been lost. I mean, most people don't really know where their food comes from. They go to a supermarket and they see, ground beef wrapped in, sitting on a styrofoam tray wrapped in plastic. And then, they don't realize, it's hard for them to conceptualize that was a cow walking around at one point.
Yeah.
I mean, compared to what you do and just your typical grocery store, what do you think, most people misunderstand about where their meat actually comes from?
Oh, yeah. I think just the process. I mean, the fact that I think people are disconnected in a sense that they don't always think about that an animal had to give their life for that steak dinner, right? Because in a grocery store setting, like you said, things are in a cellophane tray and they're wrapped in plastic and, you just go in and there's really no interaction between you and that person who cut that steak or the person who killed that animal or the person who raised the animal. You can get all of that at our shop. If you're going to walk in and you're going to see a case full of cuts and sausages and charcuterie and things that we make, but there's always going to be this dialogue between us and the customer. It's fun for us because it's like we're providing an education to the customer, or sometimes it's detective work too. I mean, people can come in and they're like, I'm looking for this certain cut. I had this at a dinner at a restaurant one time, or I was in New Orleans and they called it this, or what, you know what I mean? And so we have to kind of do some digging because as a whole animal shop, we're able to do what they're looking for, but it's just trying to get on the same page with like what we call it or what part of the animal we're pulling it from. But yeah, I mean, the shop is set up, it's very transparent. So the shop is set up in a way that people can come in and half of the space is a cut room and it's all windows. And so people can see what's going on in there. Whether we're making sausage or we're breaking down beef and pork. And it's a little bit of a light bulb moment for some people, and then they can ask, where this cut came from on the animal, or, what farm it came from. If they want to know more about it, we can tell them about the diet, we can tell them whatever they want to know. And we're very proud of the farms we work with. They do an amazing job. I mean, if it wasn't for them, we couldn't do what we do. I mean, it starts with them and the attention to detail and the care that they put into it. So, it's an experience, I think, coming in. I mean, it's a very personal thing, and you start developing relationships with people, and they start to trust you, right? I mean, because sometimes people will come in and they're like, "Hey, I'm looking for a flank steak." We might be out of flank steak because there's only 2 on an 800-pound carcass, but there's so many other steaks and cuts in an animal that people probably are, most people aren't familiar with, because you go to a grocery store, you're going to see a very limited selection of like steaks, quote unquote steaks. And there's tons of steaks in the animal that you can utilize that are delicious and tender and unique to that cut versus like a ribeye or a strip. Right. So we know, hey, we're out of flank, but we've got a toro steak. If you haven't had a toro steak, you should try it. It's amazing. It comes from kind of a similar area. It comes from the navel, which is connected to the flank primal, where the flank comes from. But it's a flat cut. You can cook it very similar, but it's going to have way more flavor than a flank steak. It's almost buttery and rich. It's delicious.
Never even heard of a Toro steak.
A flat cut like a flank steak, things like that. So that's always fun to turn people on to new cuts, because they're, people are used to sometimes doing the same thing.
Yeah, it's chuck, it's strip, it's ribeye,
it's the familiar cut. Oh, I know how to cook this. I'm familiar with this. I'm comfortable with this. But those are opportunities for us to like turn people on to these other cuts that they've never seen. They're not going to see in a grocery store ever. So it's a fun part of it.
Now, what I guess my mind's going where? Okay, so if we're only seeing these certain cuts in grocery stores, what are they doing with the rest of it? Is that what's ground beef?
Yeah, a lot of it get turned into grind. Yeah, okay. Yeah, because the way we butcher, it's seam butchery, so we're not just running things through a bandsaw. We use a bandsaw. It has its purpose. But we understand how the animal is put together and how the muscles relate to one another, and there's natural seams in the animal, and so we're utilizing those seams to pull out all these muscle groups, not just primals, but like subprimals. So you're getting down to like smaller cuts, and then you can cut steaks out of those, and that but that also helps the customer understand like the cooking process too. We can educate them on that. Like since this particular cut, came out of the shoulder, it's going to require a slower, longer, low temperature cooking time. Or this cut right here requires a fast, high heat cooking method because of the nature of the muscles, the muscle structure in the animal. So yeah, it's a lot. I think it can be kind of intimidating for some people coming in and experiencing it for the first time, because it's very different from just going to the grocery store. But we try to, make them feel comfortable, and because it's a lot. It's just like the average person doesn't know all these things, or like where all these different cuts. So it's fun for us to show people.
It is pretty cool. Yeah, because like you said, I'm always thinking of the basics that you see at a grocery store or what's on a menu at a steak restaurant, which I'm surprised if they're not serving more options than just filet. Well, I guess the money, but fillets and things like that. So.
Yeah. Some of the, there are definitely restaurants out there that are thinking outside the box and serving other cuts, or, trying to cook nose to tail, utilizing the whole thing rather than just like the middle cuts.
Right.
But yeah, but it also takes time to break down an animal like that. And the industrial side of the meat industry, which is where most of everybody's meat comes from, has gotten really good at efficiency and just doing things as fast as possible and producing the most volume they possibly can. So taking the time to pull out a little Terrace Major or, cleaning up Toro steaks or Denver steaks out of the shoulder, they're not going to do that, because the way they've marketed things and set things up, they're not maximizing the amount of steaks that you're getting out of the animal like we are.
You just got to process as much meat as possible, as fast as possible, because I've got such a high demand, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wow.
When you say local, how far? What's the radius out that you're going?
We don't have like a cutoff per se, but we have 2 beef farms. One is in Westphalia. That's Marie River Wagyu. We have another one, Price Family Farms. They're in Troy, Missouri. We work with two hog farms. One is in Myrtle, Missouri. The other one is Sullivan Farms, and I'm blanking on where they're at right now. But they're all in Missouri, and then all of our poultry comes from California, Missouri, Buttonwood Farms. But we've worked with other farms in Illinois, in Kentucky, but the ones that we get on a regular basis are all in Missouri. They happen to be in Missouri. But
That's awesome.
as long as they're within like a kind of the Midwest area, we're not shipping them from across the country or anything
Frozen
like that. But
and,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, nothing's ever frozen.
That's awesome. Wow.
That's pretty cool.
Well, one other thing, man. So you do 100-mile races. You do ultras. That's crazy. How did you get into that?
Well, when I was working for Kevin Nash at Sydney Street Cafe, I was already kind of into fitness, but nothing, not a lot of running, just short distances, just to stay in shape and some strength training and things like that. But Kevin Nash at the time, he was doing Ironmans and triathlons and road marathons, and Kevin Nash had a really big impact on me. He was my biggest mentor that I've had in my career, and I just learned a lot from him and working for him at his restaurant. And so he kind of got me into like running my first half marathon, and then from there it just kind of snowballed. I mean, I think it's just my personality. If I, starting with a half marathon, then doing more let's do more, right? Let's do more. So it turned into a full marathon, and then I got into triathlons, and I was doing like Ironman triathlons for a little while. And then I discovered trail running and like ultra distance trail running. So like my first ultra distance was a 50K trail run here in St. Louis. And I loved it. I mean, it was just incredible. I think just the experience of running in the woods and being in nature just changed it for me. I mean, it's completely different than doing a road marathon or a triathlon, where it's just a different environment. And the people that go and run these ultra distances, it's just a different vibe.
Well, it's way more hardcore for sure, right?
Well, yeah, you could look at it like that, but the people are just more laid back. I mean, it's just they're I don't know, there's more of an inviting, more welcoming feeling, more of a sense of community. I just fell in love with every aspect of it. Yeah, I mean, you got to have a screw loose, I think, to want to go that distance. But it does. I don't know. It's very important to me. I've been doing it for long enough, and I want to do it as long as I possibly can. Yeah, it's great.
Cool, man. Wow.
Well, with running a business and then training for those, how do you have the time for that?
It's tough for sure. I mean, there's only so many hours in the day. I mean, I have 4 kids, a son who's 2. And then 3 daughters that are 6, 9, and 12. And I run this business with my wife, and it's all consuming, right? I mean, I don't have much time for too many other things, but running is important to me. Like I always say it's strongly tied to my mental health. And so I just make time. I mean, I'm an early riser. So, I mean, pretty much all my runs are in the morning before work. My wife is very active as well. So we kind of split the mornings on, she'll go first. Yeah. And then she comes home, and then I go and try to, she tries to sneak out before the kids get up. 'Cause she homeschools them. So she's at home with them. And, that's a whole, 1.5 full-time jobs on its own. Like it's, I don't have the patience for that, but grateful that she's able to do that. So yeah, finding the time to do that is, it can be challenging, I mean, but I have a supportive wife. I mean, she understands the importance of it for me. And, it's almost non-negotiable. I mean, of course there's instances where we're like, okay, well, we're gonna have to move things around, or I just can't get this in, or whatever it is. But it's important enough to me that I find the time to do it.
Yeah. Well, if it's important to you, you make time for it.
Exactly. I mean,
that's how I look at it. I try to do something almost every day. Like if I don't work out, I don't feel like myself. I have to physically exert myself to feel normal. Because if I go like even a day or 2 without working out, like I start feeling like different mentally. Like I'm more irritable. Like I get pissed off quicker. I feel like but if I'm constantly working out, and I feel like I'm just too tired to get upset about things. Yeah. Or it makes you like realize like what things are really important, whenever you physically exert yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you mentioned doing your best thinking on these runs. What kind of truths tend to surface when you're alone for that long?
It's easier to let go of resentments when you're out there. Or if I'm just trying to work through a problem too at work. I mean, if there's an issue I'm facing, whether it's like a time crunch thing or a decision I have to make, I'll think about it and kind of sort it out during a run. I think, I think it's something about the, it's called EMDR, where in like counseling, or are you familiar with this? Where
EMDR, I feel like I've heard of that. Is that the electromagnetic?
Yeah. So it's an action of where it's like what's the word I'm looking for? So like the one type of EMDR is if you're like working through something hard, therapy, right? So if you're working through something in therapy and you'll have like these paddles in your hand and they'll vibrate, but they'll vibrate it'll be an alternating thing, right? And while you're thinking out this traumatic thing that might have happened to you, it just helps you process it better, right? And I think the act of running is very similar to that. It's one foot in front of the other, and you have to. There's definitely some focus involved. You're not tripping and falling, right? But I think there's something about putting one foot in front of the other, and while processing something and trying to work through it, it works. I don't know. And then of course you get this flood of endorphins and these hormones this natural high that you get. I mean, a runner's high is a real thing. That all ties into it too. So yeah, I don't know. It just my mind just seems a lot more open, and I think clearly while I'm running. Yeah, I think it's a lot of work can be done while you're getting a run in.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Depending on the issue or things that you're thinking about, can you tell how like how heavy it is by how fast you're running, or does it affect your pace at all?
No, music definitely will play a role in that. Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, I'll listen to music sometimes, or I'll listen to a podcast or a book. I mean, I listen to audiobooks, and then sometimes nothing. Just kind of depends. But yeah, I think depending on the type of music that'll affect my
it's
pace.
Like a drug.
It
I mean,
is.
I've always said because there's, you hear that song makes you run faster, makes you lift heavier, whatever it is, it pumps you up. There's like some sort of it's sometimes it's like a drug.
Yeah.
It can really help you out.
Do you have one song that sticks out in your mind that really gets you going?
Oh man. I have like, so I just have like a really like hodgepodge mix of stuff. I listen to music through Spotify. Yeah. And I listen to it's kind of a wide variety. I mean, I listen to heavier music for sure, and then the other half of the time I like more chill, like modern jazz stuff.
Okay.
So I listen to a lot of instrumental things, like synth wave or EDM, electronic dance music. And there's a whole
to keep up
tons of
set the pace for yourself.
Genres of that. Yeah. So a lot of stuff that doesn't necessarily have lyrics, but just like instrumental stuff.
Sure. Our producer's real into that. He goes to the EDC festivals and stuff like that. So I'm sure he's pumped up listening to this right now.
Yeah. It could be anything really, but yeah, those are the main ones that I gravitate towards.
Yeah, it's just because having played baseball, we always picked a walk-up song.
Yeah.
So what would your walk-up song be if you're walking into the butcher shop, you're ready to go?
I'd have to refer to my playlist. I'm terrible with like recalling song titles.
Do you have one for when you walk out to the mats for competition?
No, it's just different every time. I feel like just kind of whatever I'm into at the time, but it's always going to be something heavy for sure.
Mine was Better Than You by Metallica.
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh yeah. It was just the opening guitar and all that. Oh man, it was great.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on what I'm into at the time. I feel like I'm always like infatuated with like 5 to 10 songs, and like I play those on repeat, until I get sick of them.
Yeah, that's how I am too.
Yeah, like my son, I have a almost 4-year-old, and he's over the last like 2 weeks, he's gotten really into Linkin Park. It's hilarious hearing a almost 4-year-old from the back seat yell, Dad, put on Somewhere I Belong by Linkin Park. And I'm like, all right. Yeah, it's just, I'm like, man, I'm proud of your taste in music, son. You know, like, yes, you know, because they'll be in mom's car and they'll be listening to like Taylor Swift, and they'll come in my car. It'll be like hardcore, like screamo music and shit. You know,
it is fun. Yeah, like with my kids, like, well, my wife listens to mostly Joy FM in the car with the kids, and so that's like all they're listening to when they're with her. And then when I get in my car, you know, it could be anything. And there's this group that I recently discovered called the Barbarians of California.
Okay.
And they're heavy. And there's a song called The Library that me and my 9-year-old love. You know, we'll get in the truck. She's like, let's listen to the library song. It's real heavy. And, yeah, she's in the backseat. Like, yeah. So it's fun.
Yeah, especially when you see him in the backseat, just like going like head bang, and I'm like, hell yeah, get it, buddy. Yeah, it's so fun, man. Now, so you have 4 kids, man. So how has that changed? I mean, what impact has having kids had on your life?
Oh, it's been the best thing that's ever happened to me. It keeps me honest, and it really forces you to take a look at yourself and just how you operate as a person, right? And it's interesting because you as an adult and you start getting older, you reflect more on your childhood and your past and what kind of parents you had, and you start kind of connecting the dots, meaning just the kind of environment I was raised in and the kind of parents I had, has a very strong effect on like how I am and how I operate in this world, right? And and you can take positives from that, and you can also take negatives. Like, this was really meaningful and impactful to me as a child, and I'm going to carry on that with my kids, as a parent. Or there was things that maybe my parents maybe have said to me or were doing around me, and I can say I will never do that, like with my kids, like that's not a healthy thing. And and at the time it's like, your parents did the best they could with you, right? Like no one set them up with an instruction manual. I mean, I know that my parents loved me, and they did the best they could, to raise me. And but you can take that and apply it to today. I mean, I always say that like we're more evolved versions of our parents, because times change, things happen.
Look at the resources we have now.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane. Yeah. It's insane. Like what we know now versus what our parents knew. It's like, it's wild.
I mean, just nowadays, if we have a question about anything, you can find an answer for it in 5 seconds.
I know. I mean, you have all this information in your pocket. It's just nuts.
It's insane. I mean, like I just. Like last night, I've gotten really into playing guitars and stuff, and I recently acquired a couple of guitars, and I've been like taking them apart and putting them back together and modifying them, and I just learned how to switch out pickups last night for awesome. Like just by YouTube and ChatGPT. So I bought a little soldering iron, and I'm in the basement, soldering pickups into this guitar that I bought, and it's just like incredible. You just learn how. I was like, I literally learned how to do this in like 10 minutes.
That's super cool.
And now I'm doing it. Like I just watched two videos on it. Like, oh yeah, I can do that.
Right.
Simple. It's just like, there's so many like little things that we can learn nowadays that were never, 20 years ago, you had to have someone come over and show you how to do it, or go somewhere and learn or whatever. Now it's like, I can just learn real quick. And it's been the same way with like learning music. Like, cause I played guitar as a kid from like 10 to like 13 or 14. And then I basically gave it up for 20 years, and I just kind of picked it up again recently. But like the biggest difference I've seen is just like, oh man, if I want to learn how to play a song, there's 15 different YouTube videos out there teaching me how to play the same song. Yeah. And it's just like before, I remember being a kid, like the internet was available at the time, but like the resources on it weren't nearly what they are today. Yeah, and it's just, I mean, take that, that concept, you can apply it to fucking everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy how much information we just have available at our fingertips.
Yeah.
Well, not to mention, but like the importance of mental health nowadays on everything. And that wasn't something that was really ever talked about back then.
No.
I know that's not how my parents were raised. And I know that's not how, necessarily they raised us, my brother and I, but yeah, I mean, it's something completely different now.
Yeah. Yeah. And on that note, it's like you try to be an example, right? Of course, you want to be a good example to your kids. Just being able to talk about, your feelings and emotions, and I think is very important. I mean, my dad was generations apart from me. Like when I was born, my dad was, I think he was 43. And, so, he was born in 1939, and things were just very different for him growing up in the 50s. And, just, certain things you just didn't really talk about or discuss, or they weren't, you know what I mean? And, like just knowing how that impacts, how it affects people, and by not talking about these things, you can learn from that. And, I see a counselor, and I think it's important to be open and honest about that with your kids, right? Like, I think counseling can benefit anybody, and you don't have to have all these crazy, deep-rooted, traumatic experiences in your past. I mean, it's a good exercise to just like, have a soundboard, to bounce things off of. Just talking about things is so important, because for me personally, I mean, I can get in my head, and, there can be a lot of like untruths in there, and I can, tell myself lies, and it can get you bundled up and put you in a place that's unhealthy, but by simply talking about them with someone, whether it's your counselor or, with a parent or a friend, just does so much. And I think that's a good example to set for my kids, is, just to show them that it's okay. It's important to talk about these things, because there's a lot going on in life. The world can be a very scary, confusing place. It's important to talk about things.
Oh, absolutely.
Couldn't agree more.
How long have you guys been homeschooling your kids?
Since the beginning. Yeah. So
what was the decision behind that?
She wanted to do that from the very beginning. And we had talked about it, before we had kids and before the business really took off, that she wanted to be at home with them and homeschool them. And I didn't have any kind of issues with it. I said, I don't have the patience for that. Like, that's not something that I would ever strive to do myself, but she's capable of doing it, and she does a really good job doing it. It definitely has its struggles. I mean, there's days where she's just like, man, I feel like I'm failing at this, like this, but it's incredibly hard. I mean, it's requires so much patience, but at the same time, I now kind of seeing the process and seeing how it's benefited our kids, and what some of the public schools are offering. I don't know. I'm very grateful that she's willing to do it and is able to do it. And then, that it's happening.
Yeah, we've had a lot of people on our show that have talked about homeschooling their kids, and you mentioned benefits. What's one of the biggest ones that you've seen so far?
I mean, kids are all different, right? I mean, like a good example would be like our oldest. I don't think that she would do very well in a classroom for 8 hours. She doesn't sit still very well. She's able to focus and concentrate on the things that the task at hand, and then having the opportunity to kind of like step back, and just there's more flexibility, right, for her to learn, and people learn things differently. Like we can take our own approach with her in how we're I say we, but like how my wife is teaching a subject, you know. And it's a lot different than a classroom setting where there could be, 15 or 20 kids in the classroom. I mean, our daughter is getting exactly what she needs to comprehend this subject that she's trying to learn, so it's definitely a luxury, I mean, I don't know if everybody can do it, but we've always talked since the beginning that, once we get to the shop and in a position where she doesn't have to be there every day, that she's going to stay home and school the kids. Yeah. So.
Do you feel like they're learning at a quicker pace than they would be if they were in a public school? Yeah,
I think so. And in some ways, for sure.
Well, you mentioned your daughter not wanting to sit still in class, and I just feel like there's so many kids out there that are that same way. I know I was. Like, I don't think, people, they say, oh, my kid can't focus on this. They're sitting, they're bouncing around, they're getting up, they're doing whatever. But it's like, man, I feel like most kids are going to have a difficulty sitting in one place for 8 hours. And then, the solution for this is like, okay, let's get them on ADD medicine just to get them to focus. It's like, man, I think if you gave them something interesting to do or something that they were into, like, I think their focus would increase exponentially. Like, cause I know if you sit me in front of a bunch of math problems, like it's just going to go right over my head and I'm going to zone out. But like, you put a good book in front of me, or you put like some history lesson, like I'm dialed in, like I'm into this stuff. But it just totally depends on what it is. And I think that, just our traditional school system, just, being the way it is with, 8 hours, Monday through Friday, like, kind of preparing kids for, the work life is, I just don't know if it's the best for us, I mean, because I know that there's times where I don't think I was the best student for sure, but, I made decent enough grades to pass. But like, could I really go back and tell you a lot of the stuff that I learned? Very little of it.
Yeah.
It's like, how much stuff did I really, really learn that I use constantly on a daily basis? I mean, there's some of it for sure, but a mass majority probably just went in one ear out the other.
Yeah.
I remembered it. I memorized it to pass the test, and now, I don't remember any of it.
Yeah.
It's just...
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like this, it's almost like a cookie cutter, setup, right? And it's not for everybody. I think there's more opportunity to find a way with homeschooling to find a way or figure out how this particular kid learns, like what type of what not only the environment but the approach, the method, the method, and you can find what interests them and like work off of that and then build off of that, and that's kind of like you're into getting them to learn something and be interested in it. And I mean, they're still learning all the basics, I mean, like what normal kids would learn in a classroom setting, but the approach is different, just structured differently in a way that suits them. So it's
right, and they can work through a lot of that stuff more in a day than they would at school, because like how much time is wasted.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, a very small percentage of the day is spent with them actually doing their work, and there's a couple of days a week where they go to a co-op and they're with other homeschool kids. I mean, the homeschool community is huge, versus what it was. I mean, I remember like when I was a kid, like the homeschool kids were like the weirdos. Yeah. And like, sure. It wasn't like a very common thing at all. And I think like the pandemic helped kind of speed that up.
I think so too.
But now it's super common, and there's a huge community of kids and parents that are doing it. And, so they're constantly with friends, or, whether it's like CYC sports, or they're doing outings with other homeschool kids, or they're at a co-op and like one of the parents is teaching, so they get plenty of the social element of things, like a lot.
Yeah, I think that's the key is you just, if you're going to homeschool, you just can't, you got to get them out and get them involved in things. They got to be, doing activities, playing sports, doing extracurriculars. Cause that's truly where like friendships are made,
yeah.
Sure, bullshitting with your friends in class, talking, getting in trouble, like getting yelled at by the teacher cause you're talking to your friends. Yeah, sure some of that happens there, but like, I mean, majority of like the friend making activities are going to be your recess, before school, after school, lunch. Like those are the times where you're like hanging out. And then on top of that, after school activities, sports, theater, whatever it is, any sort of extracurricular. So like, I think if you are going to homeschool, I just think that you just got to make sure that, the kids are getting socialized. I think that's a huge aspect.
And I think that is just as important, if not more, than like the academic side of things, right? And that ties into I think this, like the success of a business is like if you learn how to establish relationships and nurture them. I mean, I think that is vital to life, right? I mean, if you're teaching your kids how to have healthy relationships with people, how to set boundaries, things like that. And from a business standpoint, I mean, like the business would not be around today without good relationships, whether that's like with our farmers or our customers, or, other people in your town that are in kind of the same industry, staff members. I mean, it's all about building relationships and healthy relationships and nurturing them. Because it takes a village, right? It doesn't, as they say, you can't.
Well, a team. You learn those team aspects, how to be a part of the team, fit into a team, lead a team, all those things through sports and those extracurriculars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Unless you're playing like golf or tennis or like those individual sports, but like most kids are getting it. Like, I mean, soccer. Like, what are the basics that everybody? Soccer, t-ball, all of that stuff. Yeah. So. I mean, I got my kids. I told them, you guys can do whatever you want. I mean, my background's in baseball. If you want to play baseball, great. I'm not coaching you. But, they're playing soccer, basketball, talk about playing hockey. I don't know if I want to go that route yet because that'll be the end of all things.
It's all consuming. Yeah. It's financially.
Financially.
Yeah, that's the thing, too, is like nowadays these kids want to specialize in things so early. And it's like, no. Play multiple sports, dude.
Yeah.
That's the thing is like, especially in high school, you see these kids like middle school really start to hone in on one thing. And it's like, I'm speaking of it because I know baseball, but it takes baseball players are athletic and in a unique way, but you need to play other sports to keep you a well-rounded baseball player in my mind. And, you got all these kids that are focusing on it, but you're losing your athletic abilities like that you can learn from football, basketball, soccer, things like that. But, and it just drives me nuts when people are like, oh no, you need to focus on this one sport. I'm like, if you have a coach that's telling you that, run, get away from that. So.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, we take the same approach with our kids. I mean, we get them in whatever. I mean, they've done a ton. And it's funny because like our oldest, she's done gymnastics and tumbling and swimming and all these things. And the basketball season just finished up for her and she didn't care for it. It just wasn't her thing. And so now she's going to try field hockey, which was, to me, I was just like kind of out of left field. I'm like, all right, let's do it, But I agree. It's important. I mean, it as an athlete, it makes you more well-rounded. You're not just one-dimensional. And every sport's different. So you have to learn how to contribute to the team, as an individual, whether it's from like an athletic standpoint or from like a social, because there's always going to be people that you may connect with, jive with, and then other people that are like,
not this guy,
not this person. I'm
not into him.
Yeah,
man. Well, Chris, this has been awesome having you in here, man. We've really, really enjoyed getting to know you here.
Yeah, for sure.
And thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Appreciate
absolutely.
it.
Is there anything you want to ask us before we get you out of here?
I guess. Well, who have you not had on the show that you really would love to sit down and have a conversation with?
Oh, man.
It could be like, locally or nationally or like just really anybody. I mean, I'm sure that's a loaded question. But
it's a tough one, but
obviously our favorite podcasters are Joe Rogan and Chris Williamson, so we'd love to have them on. That'd be awesome.
That's a high bar to set, but yeah.
And locally, like Andy Frisella or Sal Frisella with First Form, those guys would be awesome to have on. Honestly, we just honestly bringing people in that we don't know and for example, sitting down with you and getting to hear your story and letting people tell their stories has been awesome.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say the same. I mean, it's just whoever, anybody locally that has a story, Pat and I have said this multiple times, not, do you find necessarily everybody interesting? No, but I think everybody does have a story to tell. And, there might be something very interesting about that story.
Yeah.
And, it's just our job to get that out there and get it into the world and, learn something from it. Hopefully we entertain you, educate you, or motivate you. Like we're trying to do one of those three things, or sometimes a combination of the three.
Yeah. And you can learn from anybody.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, before we get you out of here, we do end the show the same way every time. So Pat's got one last question for you.
We call it the tombstone game. Here lies Chris. What's it say on your tombstone?
Oh man. I guess a loving husband and father, and just a hard worker, I guess.
There you go.
Perfect. Yeah, that's all it needs to be.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again, Chris.
Thanks,
and can't wait to come check out the shop. I'm going to definitely come in sometime very soon. So we'll see you there.
All right.
And
thank you.
Thanks to everybody at home that watched or listened to this episode. If you could hit that subscribe button for us, that would help us out a ton. Comment what you thought below. Share this episode with a friend, and we will see you next time.